You're listening to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast. Two friends since the first time baggy jeans were in style. Now guides on your nostalgic tour of Disney history, one magical film at a time. I'm Eddie Ferguson.
And I'm JB Waggoner. And on today's episode, we be sailing the high seas in search of treasure as we review Treasure Island.
So fasten that safety restraint and pull up on the yellow strap. It's time to open the vault.
Cue that Disney-est sound effect. Eddie. You ready for this?
You nailed that. You've got a great pirate voice.
God, it's the end of the day. It's the end of our vacation. My voice is just kind of like resting, doesn't want to move. So it's like the perfect pirate voice. Like I feel like I'm really, it's going to be a very good podcast voice today. I'm just feeling it. A prime podcast voice.
I can't stand the podcast voices though that are like really soft and contemplative and
like they're doing ASMR or something.
Just speak. Oh, when I found those videos, that just sent me over the edge. I can't do any ASMR. Drives me nuts. We were listening to one of our favorite Disney podcasts the other day, and it was an incredible story, but the guy had such dry mouth, and I'm just like tapping my hand. I'm chewing gum, and Sarah's like, "You want to turn this off so bad, don't you?" And I'm like, "I do, but I also want to know what he's talking about."
Hard pass on all of it. Yep.
Treasure Island, question for you. I've been trying to rack my brain on this ever since we watched this earlier today. Was reading the book assigned in school? Because I know that I've read this book at least once, maybe twice.
I have a strong memory for some odd reason of fourth grade. I was reading it in fourth grade, I believe. Like with Mrs. Titus's class, I think I for some odd reason remember being in the back of her room and us reading it together, or maybe we just watched the movie. I can't remember, but fourth grade feels about a good time.
And see, I have memory of reading this in middle school in Mrs. Berkey's English class.
Maybe that too.
So maybe I revisited or whatever. So I guess to start there, I'm far more familiar with the book than I am with this particular adaptation. I had seen it once before, but not as frequently as I've seen some of the other adaptations, like Treasure Planet, like The Muppets Treasure Island, which we may argue is the greatest Muppet movie of all time. One could argue.
It could.
But yeah. Do you remember watching this at all? Was this a repeat watcher?
The only thing I remember about this would be the Long John Silver, played by Robert Newton. It's kind of hard to forget his character, and partially because, little known fact to people, his version of Long John Silver is how we get our current image, specifically the sound of what a pirate should sound like. We get it from him. Like, he played the character with a heightened version of what, when I looked up what they called it, it was a West Country accent in near that area in England and Bristol, I believe. And he has some of that action, but he just played it even farther. And that version, which this movie came out in 1950, so 70 years, the past 70 years, this is what our popular belief of what a pirate should sound like is him specifically. And if you even listen to some of the other pirates in this movie, they don't have anything. They don't have any sort of accent in any way. Like, they're ruffians, but they're not like, they don't have that R like that we were kind of talking about up at the front. It's because of Robert Newton, and he did such a good job with it, and so iconic with that just became the sound that all pirate movies from then on, all the rides, all everything, and maybe maybe it's that Disney was part of the reason why it became even more, because of having Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which is probably arguably my favorite ride at Disneyland. Granted, it's a different storyline than this one. This is obviously Treasure Island. That's from the other movie franchise. But that's it. He specifically is what I remember. If I had ever seen this before, it's his portrayal, and maybe a little bit of Jim Hawkins, played by Bobby Driscoll, is also a very specific actor as well.
Yeah, I think that cannot be overstated. Just kind of the impact of this movie. Like, you go
changed history
anywhere in the English speaking world, and you say, well, in this intro, I said, hey, I wrote this for you to kind of say it like a pirate, and you immediately adopted his accent.
Yep.
And you go anywhere, it's like, what's a pirate's favorite fast food restaurant? Arby's. Yep. Right? Like, boom. That blows my mind that it goes back to this movie, that this is the movie that sets all of that emotion until, up to today, that is the voice we adopt. And I think it's kind of appropriate because the book itself, the whole story sets up for us in our kind of, broad general culture, most of our images of pirates, right? The idea of deserted islands, treasure maps with X marks the spot, one-legged seamen with parrots. This is all Treasure Island. Treasure Island is what gives us this. This is, not historically accurate. The accent definitely is not like all pirates speak like that. To quote Indiana Jones, not all treasure is at an X marks the spot. But like we arrived to all of these conclusions because of Treasure Island, because of the book and the movie, that has such an impact on how we view pirates. And then I would even say, like, we have this affinity for pirates. Like, it is somehow like cool. And especially in the past 15, 20 years, with the resurgence with the Pirates of the Caribbean series, like, it's everywhere. This kind of like pirate culture stuff. And, that all stems back to Treasure Island. That was the first to kind of grab the zeitgeist with an interest in pirates.
This is obviously based off of the book from Robert Louis Stephenson. What was funny was I tried looking up what his other books were, and it threw in Frankenstein, which doesn't make any sense to me because that was written by a female author. So I was trying to figure that, but evidently Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was another one of his big. I was about to say movies. What am I talking about? Didn't even have movies back then, but another one of his books. But this being again in the public domain, I found 10 different movies, all named Treasure Island, and this is not even throwing all the ones that are like slightly. I just typed in Treasure Island, and IMDb gave me like 10 of them. This one's obviously very famous for. This was the first version in color. First Treasure Island in color. There's ones that even predated this, but then of course the big ones we get are Treasure Planet, which we cover. We covered that right in our childhood movies from the early 2000s. So you can listen to that whole podcast.
We covered another Robert Louis Stephenson story.
Ooh.
You and my favorite.
Which one?
Kidnapped. Another classic.
Another classic. But then also we get Muppet Treasure Island, which we talked about earlier. That was. So back on John Silver, when the movie started and we hadn't gotten to him yet, I was already in my head going, this is gonna feel weird not having Treasure Island with Tim Curry. Like, I was waiting for Tim Curry to come on to stage, but then it doesn't take long for you to just kind of fall for Robert Newton and his portrayal of Long John Silver, and just how weirdly both dangerous and interesting and weird and scary, but fatherly, or maybe more like an uncle, and he played it so well, because that character is a weird, strangely not confusing, but like mixed character for you to even be at the end where Jim Hawkins is about to runs to the ground, runs his little boat aground, and he's like, push me, like, help me out. And he like tries to kill him, and then he doesn't. And then Jim pushes back in, and you totally get it. It's like, I can't quit you, but I'm gonna push you back into the water. So I was just like, as old as this movie is, I think that was probably one of the best parts of this entire film, is what Robert Newton does with that character.
For sure. And I think, there are things that have kind of gone on to become commonplace. And when you go back and you see the original iteration of it kind of seems cheesy or campy. Like I'm thinking of some of the like Agatha Christie novels. Like the first time I read Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, it has all of the mystery tropes that we like are so common, that when you actually read that version, even though she originated it, that was the first time we saw any of those tropes. Like when you read it, it doesn't seem real. It feels cheesy or campy. But here, and I was kind of expecting that. It's like, is this going to come off? And to me, it doesn't. Even though this is the first time we hear the pirate voice, this is kind of the first time we see this personification of pirates that is now just commonplace. This doesn't seem cheesy. It feels authentic. Like the way he presents it is, it's grounded, and you feel. I think that is one of the things that I love about the Treasure Island story, is that no matter what version or no matter how they kind of play with it, you feel that Long John Silver and Jim Hawkins relationship. That is such an interesting dynamic that is created there in the story. And this particular version holds up to that and really is the driving force of the whole movie.
Beyond Robert Newton, I think I think I found myself, despite the fact that I really enjoyed his character, and I think near the end it definitely picks up. That first third of the film is just trudging along. It's not a very fast moving film by any means, and of course this is obviously dated in its like editing techniques and stuff like that. So watching, like, I went and saw the new Wonka movie today. And I was also, when I came back and watched this. So it's hard to watch the two of those back and forth through just completely different environments and stuff. But I will say that one of the characters that jumped out at me that anytime he was on screen, I was just ready to laugh, was Squire Trelawney. Like his lines in this were just so ridiculous. Hang your practice. I'm your practice. Like
my favorite of his was, I'd wager my wig on it.
I wager my wig on it. That's downright un-English. The best one though was, you're a trump, young Hawkins. I was like, what does that even mean? Because obviously doesn't mean what we think of it meaning now.
Right.
So he was just probably the most absurd of all the characters. Like he couldn't even just like say, let's go. It's like he had to somehow have some quip about it that made no sense whatsoever. But I also was like, you know what? He brought some life to the front part of this film, even though near the end he was kind of like kind of pushed to the side for other characters in it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I mean, it is fun that they're going on an adventure, looking out for buried treasure. But the back and forth of who's got the cabin, who doesn't have the cabin, who's got control of the boat, who doesn't, which is what, especially the Pirates of the Caribbean movies played and made it, like, used that trope over and over again in that series. I kind of started losing interest to some degree. For me, it didn't hold my attention, kind of from, like, throughout the film. There were moments where I liked it, especially if it was like Jim and Long John together. But, and also because I'm just so familiar, I've seen so many of these adaptations that you just kind of know what's going on. That for me, it was okay watching it, but I didn't have a strong feeling throughout this film. I kind of was doing kind of other things while also watching it. But did you feel the same way, or were you more drawn in? Did your kids like it? I didn't really watch this with my kids other than my newborn.
What'd she think of that? No, I did watch it with the kids, and I mean, there's a lot of questions. They had especially questions. Guns and stabbings and stuff like that. Yeah, so the kids were, well, what is this? What's going on?
When the dude throws a club at the other guy and it just bonks off of him, that like knocks him out.
I think the whole who has the fort, who doesn't have the fort, like all of that. Man, outside of the book, I don't know of any adaptation that I've watched that does that well. Like it plays so well in the storyline as you're reading it. But I would say all the adaptations feel slow in that moment for me. It's just kind of a tricky one to play out. It kind of feels a bit of a mystery dropped into the middle of it. So yeah, that feels weird. That feels odd. I get a little bored with this adaptation. Definitely gave a lot more to Silver's struggle with the other pirates. And those were the moments that kind of really felt kind of dragged to me, that just kind of, those were kind of
Pirate Mary or whatever his name was.
Where, we had the, and then where they do the black spot. My son had lots of questions about the black spot.
Of course he should.
The majority of the questions were just like, now what is this? What does this mean? For a while he thought black spot was a person, like Blackbeard. It just created
black spot.
Lots of confusion. And I'm like, no, it's just like a warning, a no. But what for? And I was like, well,
the black spot is the most Treasure Island part of any because all the other ones are tropes about pirates, but like the black spot, the only people that do the black spot is Treasure Island. So that moment for me at the front, it's great because then it's like, what is this thing that he just got? By the end, when they get it and it's in the Bible, and he's like, you put this in a page of the Bible? Like, what are you doing? I like it in Muppet Treasure Island because they play it out for comedic purposes, and then they're all like freaking out because they didn't realize what they were doing. But here, I've definitely felt like these guys don't really have any idea what they're doing. But I did like when Mr. Mary, when the Pirate Mary, when they got the group in the boat, and then Mary has to go down to the hold for the mutiny that didn't work. And he's like, Mary, and he like opens up the porthole and he's like, hello. Just like that. I thought that was funny. The other character that's like completely random, and he's in basically 2 scenes this entire movie, is Ben Gunn, the crazy man that's been living on the island. I had to stop. Like anytime he was on, I was just like, what is happening right now? What is he talking about?
Yeah. And again, compared to the book and the other adaptations, this is by far the least that you see Ben in any of the stories, which for me makes his character in this movie almost pointless. Why did you even include him?
He hid the treasure, and that's it.
He just kind of has...
Spoiler alert.
He hid the treasure, like he comes at the end. Well, come on, folks. This story is...
Since 1950.
A couple hundred years old, yeah. I was going to say the story. But he just seems unnecessary to me.
And whenever I saw him on screen, I was only ever thinking of the robot version of him from Treasure Planet with the circuits going crazy and stuff. I just kept on thinking.
Voiced by Martin Short.
Oh, that was a good choice.
I had mentioned one of my favorite lines by the Squire guy. I'd wager my wig on it, which I think I may use that in the future. That might be a fun little line just to kind of pull out. I had a few other lines. I don't know if you had a few other lines that you jotted down. And of course, the two that really stood out to me are Long John Silver lines. So I have to attempt my best pirate accent in doing these lines. He says, "Them that die be the lucky ones."
Yep, I have that one down.
Ooh, yeah. But by far my favorite is he has this moment where he gets just frustrated and like moving around and everything, and he just goes, "Oh, for 10 toes."
That was a good impersonation too.
Oh, but I love it. I'm like, these are especially I'd wager my wig on it, and "oh, for 10 toes." What great lines to reuse in everyday life and just confuse people.
Tittle tattle. I want to use that in something. Just tittle tattle.
Tittle tattle.
They ain't pretty, but they knows the sea. That was a good one. He has like the full group of people. When he calls off someone, you know what? They're no worse than duck wallopers. I don't know what that means, but it was actually like a sign of like, not half bad. Okay. I was just like, what? What does that even mean? Yeah, the them that die will be the lucky ones was really good.
It just sounds like such a great pirate line. You know what I mean? Like there's just now even not just the voice, but there's just like certain things you would say that just sound piratey. And you hear that in this movie, and it's odd to realize that that didn't exist prior to this. That this movie gave us all of these catchy piratey things, and so them that die be the lucky ones. Just sounds like something Barbossa would say in one of the newer pirate movies.
Well, we are lucky to have gotten this movie, and the reason that we got this movie because this is Disney's first feature-length live action film that they. Oh, are you shaking? You shaking your head?
No, I agree. I think that's another big thing to highlight about this movie is, you don't think of this as being like a groundbreaking film per se, but like we've already kind of talked about some of the cultural things. But for Disney, this is groundbreaking. This is huge.
Yeah, their first full venture into live action, and it kind of happened again because of culture and money. So the World War I had finally ended, and so they are now back to able to make movies, and they're obviously working on Cinderella around the same time. But they found out that they had basically found $1 million or more from box office receipts in Europe. And in England, they basically said, you can't, your money's only good here. Like they couldn't take the money back out because of some things that happened during the war and some of the post-war reaction. And maybe it was just Europe saying we need to recoup all the money so that we can rebuild after it. Maybe that was it. I don't know. So basically, Disney had two options. He could make an animated film in England with that money, which would mean having to hire all new staff over there and start a studio from scratch, which felt like a lot. Or he could do a live action film, and that's what led him to doing the Robert Louis Stephenson adaptation. And RKO was a part of this as well. They're the distribution company for this. They also were in the same place. They had like $800,000 to play with that they had to use in England, and so they just joined forces, found some British actors, and went for it with this story, which is crazy to think that like they just were had this money laying around, a couple million, almost $2 million. And they're like, you know what? We should just make a movie with this. Hey, let's just throw it to these guys and have them do something with it.
A part of that, an interesting story, is that Bobby Driscoll, the young boy who plays Jim Hawkins, is the only non-British actor in this movie. That was a part of the stipulation, is, they needed to have all British actors in this movie. And so they, what it comes to find out is they violate British labor law. He's not a Brit, so he doesn't have a work permit to work in Great Britain. And he's two years too young to get a work permit at this time. And so as the case is being figured out and everything, Disney just rushes the production on everything that Bobby Driscoll's in, gets all of his stuff done and ships him back to the United States. And then they finish off the movie without him. And in the end, Driscoll's father and Walt Disney Productions each get fined £100 for doing that, which, in those days is real money. I got to look that up and see what that would actually be today. And he's prohibited from work on any other films in the UK.
Wow.
So this is kind of they kind of had that little sneaky, to have the money to be able to finance the production and everything like that. But they also were kind of sneaky on the other side and getting young Bobby Driscoll in there to play Jim Hawkins, which is just kind of an interesting little story on how all of this came about, and really opens up for Disney this whole new area of revenue. They had by now had gotten into live action documentaries very successfully. Of course, animation, but now I think this sets up that parallel trajectory for the Disney studios of not just animation, but also these live action films that in many ways rise to kind of the same cultural significance, parallel with some of their animation counterparts.
Yeah, and it's what we know them for now. At the time, it would have been who would have thought that they could do fully live action, no tie in, because a lot of their live action had animated sequences in it, which is interesting because it's way harder to do that than just live action. But they kind of went backwards. Let's start it with animation, then to the combination, then to that, like what we saw with Dos Saludos Amigos and other things like that, or Three Caballeros. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and we've got a few more coming up here real soon. We're going to look at 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is huge. I mean, that was a huge milestone for special effects. It was a big movie for the company. Then you get several movies out of Davy Crockett. We're only going to look at one of them. But there's, and that has a huge impact on the parks and everything as well. But it just opens up this door. Old Yeller, The Shaggy Dog, Swiss Family Robinson. The whole time I'm watching Treasure Island, I can feel Swiss Family Robinson's just right around the corner, just a decade later in this, right? There's so many other famous live action movies that Disney goes on to produce that we know so well. But yeah, it came together kind of happenstance for Treasure Island.
Would they have ever even made a live action film, just live action, if they didn't have $1 million in another country?
That is a great question. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say yes, eventually he would have pushed into this, right? Disney was always just this ever curious, wanted to try something different, got bored with the old ways. So yeah, I could guess that we would eventually get there, but maybe not soon enough, and maybe not this version.
So you alluded to a little bit, but if people want to live out their best pirate life, where is this a part at the parks? Is there, I know we've talked about Pirates of the Caribbean, but where is Treasure Island, if at all, a part of the parks today?
I couldn't find any like specific Treasure Island tie-in.
Not even the pirate boat, the pirate ship boat in Disneyland.
No, that is the Columbia. That is based off of the Mayflower.
Interesting.
Yeah. Even though they use it in Phantasmic for kind of like the pirate ship in the pirate sequence. But like, I think the obvious one is like, this definitely had an influence on Pirates of the Caribbean, and all of the subsequent just kind of Disney pirate culture. I think especially in these past 20 years, since we've gotten the first Pirates movie, we just see the pirate stuff all over the parks. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no like major specific reference to Treasure Island. There's probably like a few Easter eggs, a few things here and there. But for the most part, no, it doesn't have any strong representation.
Man, another one, just random movies.
Disney tends to favor their kind of, when it's their live action stuff, they tend to favor when it's like their own thing. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like Treasure Island is one of these public domain things that is just like used a ton. Like there are a ton of Treasure Island versions. So I think they lean in more on just kind of the broad general piratey stuff and not particularly, Treasure Island. Speaking of public domain, I'm going to do a little rabbit trail, but I'm going to come right back. When you were mentioning this, made me thought of that. Now, as of today, we are recording this on the 1st of January. Steamboat Willie is in the public domain.
Yep.
And I, of course, I'm sure many of you have heard about this because like lots of news channels are doing a quick little bit on it, or there's reels about it because it's, it's great clickbait. But I heard a copyright lawyer say something really interesting that I thought is cool. He said, it is now time for the next generation to do to Disney's work what Disney did to the previous generation's work.
Which is?
And what he was saying was, if you look at many of these early stories, they're public domain stories. They're ones that Disney had heard, like Treasure Island, that had then moved into the public domain. And Disney decided to take a public domain story and do his version of it, right? And so what this copyright lawyer said was like, Disney built his empire on using public domain information or stories, public domain stories. Now it's time for the next Walt Disney to use Walt Disney stories to make his, storytelling empire. And I'm like, quite poetic. Like, way to go. I mean, that's very lawyer, but still, I thought that was a poetic way to look at it.
Yeah, they can't
and
get too
apropos
mad.
Here with Treasure. No, because this is how most of their stories come from these public domain stories.
The thing is, though, is when he was doing this, the public domain was what, like 25 years, 30 years?
75?
Well, no, 75 was later on. Like they got that date moved a couple times. So when he would have been,
this is true,
when he was making them in the early 20s, 30s, 40s, like he would have been making things that hadn't been gone that long, like
too long,
30 years, 50 years or less, I believe. Especially if you're talking about late 1800s, some of the stuff that they were pulling from. It wasn't until they started lobbying to get it that they moved it to 75, then moved it to 95. So yeah, I think I like that. I like that take. I like that law take.
I thought you would appreciate that, but
any final
is it that time?
Yeah. Are we ready to give it our rating? Whether it's, and for those of you following at home, we rate all of the films that we review on here with a 1 through 5. 5 being essential, like a must see, must keep with you at all times in your heart. Classic, Number 4, this is just a classic Disney film. 3, entertaining. It's kind of fun. 2, interesting, whether good or bad. And then 1 is back in the vault. So, Eddie, what are you going to classify this film?
This is a hard one because I got a divorce in my head, separate the story, the overall love of the story in the book and the film. I think I'm going to shoot it straight down the middle. I'm just going to say a 3, entertaining. There's a part of me that wants to say it's classic, but I think there's enough moments in there. I'm just like, no, 3, entertaining.
Yeah, if Long John Silver, the Long John Silver we get here was plucked out of this film, it would be an immediate back in the vault for me. But yeah, and because we've kind of taken out the half points that we did in our previous rating system, and it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to give it a 2, interesting. And near the back half, it starts picking up a little bit, and we get Trelawney. So Trelawney and the relationship between Jim Hawkins and John, and the fact that it's so iconic, like it did set off so many tropes and stuff that even Disney's version of it did. I'm going to leave it at a 2, interesting. We're going to keep it there.
Yeah, you do feel it. I just one last time want to circle back on these tropes that were started by this Disney version of it, right? Like that there's a part of me that wants to bump this up purely based off of that, but that's not the movie standing on its own. It's kind of what's come since then. But it is quite remarkable that the whole world thinks of a pirate voice based off of this one actor's presentation in this movie. Mm-hmm. That's kind of mind blowing when you stop and you think about it.
It's nuts. Yeah. Well, now that we are filled you guys up on all of Disney nostalgia, we're going to talk a little bit about some Disney news, mostly talking about 2024. As you're listening to this, it's a couple days into the new year. We've all got our resolutions going. We've all worked out at the gym this morning. I know, Eddie, you have bright and early. We've all done all of the things that we're supposed to be doing day one. Maybe or maybe not. Who knows? Eddie's shaking his head profusely right now. So a couple of things we wanted.
I go back to work tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the day.
In my mind, and you got to remember, I'm a procrastinator at heart. So procrastinators unite tomorrow.
This is great. So we're going to give you, first off, we're going to give you all of the many Disney things you have to look forward to in 2024, which is less than we normally would. We were just talking about that. There's some holes. Yeah, there's some holes in the schedule. And there's nothing really that we've got you got some time to wait for it. So these are mostly movies, and then we've got a couple of Disney Plus series at the end because it felt really low to not include them. So first off, you got in May 2020 or May 24th, we got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I'm excited about because all of these Planet of the Apes movies have been stellar.
So good.
June 14th, we get Inside Out 2, which shocked the world with that first trailer. I'm so excited. Deadpool.
The most watched trailer in I want to say Disney history.
Whoa.
Did you know that?
I didn't know this.
Yeah. Inside Out 2, when that trailer dropped, like its view counts and everything broke all the previous records.
It would make sense. I was half of those views, so there you go. Okay. July, we get Deadpool 3. So those are all of the summer movies. We only got about 3 of them, and you could one Marvel, one Pixar, one Disney film. Like we don't get a lot of them for this year.
Is Deadpool going to come out under Fox like the previous 2, or is it going to come out under Disney?
I am not sure. You can look that up while I am going through more of the list.
That would be interesting because
I'm assuming this is a Marvel film.
First.
I think this is going to be a Marvel Studios film, right? Am I
but
right
the
on that?
Marvel Studios films are distributed by Walt Disney Pictures.
So maybe it is.
So what I'm getting
Got
at,
it.
I don't know if there's been any other R-rated Walt Disney distributed pictures. I'm getting technical. You go on with the list.
Okay.
I'll do a little digging here.
Well, here we go. There is a still untitled Alien movie film, part of the Alien series, franchise, whatever you want to call it. So it's still untitled, but that comes out August 16th. So that rounds out all of the summer movies. You get about 4 of them to choose from. And then we jump all the way to December 20th, Mufasa, which is the prequel to it's they're making it just the same as they did the live looking animated CGI Lion King movie that they redid a few years ago. This is the prequel to that, so it's a little hard to it's not animated, but it's CGI and it's full, anyways. So there's a giant hole. You said this, Eddie, before we jumped on. No, in November, right around Thanksgiving, there is almost always a Disney animated film coming out then, and there's none.
Always. Like they even dropped Ray and the Last Dragon during the pandemic on that time frame. It's kind of crazy, yeah. When you stop and you think about it, that there is none.
Is this because of the strike?
I think it is. I think at the end of the day, it's twofold. I think it's about the strike. I also think the strike gave studios a moment to take a deep breath and realize they're spending stupid amount of money on stuff and not really reaping the benefits. So I think, and Iger has said it in several things of just like, yeah, we're probably oversaturating. Like we need to slow it down. And I think that since Walt Disney Animation has had 2, really stinkers in the past 2 years, I think they are thinking, you know what, it might be better to hold off and, let's pump more effort into this Frozen 3 and 4 that they've got coming along. And they're thinking those are sure bets that'll just rake in the cash for them.
Yeah, they don't even have anything like Pixar has its next films, like because we've got, obviously we talked about Inside Out 2, Elio, which got punted a year, but there isn't any like set in stone. We are definitely sure that this is going to be the next animated Disney film. There's nothing that I can find. Like there's talked about Toy Story 5 is in development, Frozen 3 is in development, Frozen 4 is in development, Zootopia 2. But we're not, there's nothing that, like, by this point we should already know what's coming, and they've been so forward in that
title. Yeah.
But this really is a giant question mark right now. Like what's going to come out of it? Are they rethinking what they're doing? Like what's going on? I don't know. But those are the movies that are coming out next year. But then I also wanted to throw in there as well, especially for all the Star Wars fans.
Hold on. Before we move on from the movies, I have an answer to my question. Yes, Deadpool 3 is being distributed by Walt Disney Pictures. And yes, this is the first R-rated film for both Marvel Studios and for Disney. This is the first R-rated movie to have the Disney distributor logo at the front. This isn't the first time Disney has done an R-rated movie. It's just typically when they do an R-rated movie, they push it out under like one of their other distributors, like Touchstone Pictures or whatever. But this will be the first time that we see the Disney name before an R-rated film.
How are we going to live, Eddie? How are we going to go on with our with our lives?
What is this world coming to?
The last two things.
I've not seen any of the Deadpool movies, to be honest with you, though. Just to put that out there.
I can't remember if I saw the second one. I did see the first one and maybe had to fast forward a few times where it's just like, I'm good. I don't need this. There's moments that it's funny, but it's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot. But to finish off 2024, what to be expecting for this year. Just wanted to throw out there because there are two. There's no release dates on these yet, but they're previously supposed to be in 2023. Is the two Disney series, The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. Both have been in production. They've been working on them. I think both had 2023 original release dates, but those are now punted. I don't know when they're coming out. We have no idea, but those are two that were in production. And also Andor season 2. Like, when are we going to get that next part of the Andor series? I think that's also a question as well. Will that be this year, or did all the strikes kind of push everything out crazy, and they're just reticent to put out a ton of content? We might see more Star Wars content this year than Marvel content this year.
That'd be crazy. I think this is the year, though, for us to see the effects of the strike. There's just going to be a lot that doesn't happen that usually does, because Hollywood was shut down for half the year.
Is that one of your expectations for Disney in 2024, Eddie? Or the last little segment we have here? Expectations?
I think one of my expectations is, I mentioned it earlier, I think all the studios are going to walk. I don't think their typical recipes for hitting it up big in the box office are working. And so I think all of them are kind of reassessing, looking at all of that. I mean, even, what's happened over here with the Christmas season, like some of this, like Aquaman didn't do near the levels of the previous one. I think that's what we're going to see in 2024 is this recalibration. I don't know if you heard the news, but like there's strong rumors that Paramount and Warner Brother Discovery are going to merge. I didn't realize Paramount apparently is like on the verge of bankruptcy. Like they're barely, surviving. So, I mean, that's a huge consolidation that is, rumored to be in the talks for 2024. And I think that's just going to have a huge, that's just one of many recalibrations that we're seeing across it all as people figure out what do audiences want and how do they want it. Like there's definitely, Barbenheimer showed us there's an appetite to go to the theater. That is still there. People will show up in droves, but there's certain things we do want and other things that we don't want. Superhero film, you used to say was like a sure bet that's what people want to see that on the big screen. It's like, actually, no, that's not what want to see. It's more of the visual, the cinematography. That's, I think, why Barbie and Oppenheimer were such a big draw. So yeah, I think this will be the year of that all kind of sorting itself out. From Disney specifically, I think this will be the year that they figure out what they're going to offer with streaming, right? We're going to see the full integration of Hulu, which I think will make Disney Plus the streaming app. I think eventually that'll just merge all together somehow.
We've already got Hulu.
Oh, really?
Hulu signs are all over our Disney Plus now.
It makes it just an easier one-stop shop. Like there's a lot of great content there. I think also 2024 is where we're going to see what they're going to do with ESPN, and in particularly ESPN Plus or their streaming version of it. And I think what Disney does with that will kind of set the tone of this is what streaming is going to be. From the live sports, we've said it a million times. That's the key component that streaming hasn't ever figured out. If Disney can figure it out, which they say in 24 is when they're going to release what they're doing with ESPN, that could be the piece that solves this puzzle.
So you had a list of expectations you had for Disney in 2024. Did you want to kind of go through some of the ones that you had?
Yeah, the other big one is, I mean, this is a lot of, insider baseball here, but in March is when they have their big shareholder meeting, and we're still in the middle of a huge proxy fight with the guys that are trying to get onto the board. That I think Disney's gonna have to swallow that one. There's not too much they can do to fight that one off. So my expectation there is that you see those two guys get on there. And I mean, not without any details, I would say that that's probably going to be a positive overall for fans, because it's going to cause Disney to get out of this rut that they are obviously in. Anytime you've got a big change or shakeup like that, especially blanking on his name, but the one guy that is coming in that's got over 40 years of experience there, but more in kind of the classic version and has been out during these past 10 years. I'm looking forward to that. I think that might be a good little shakeup. So we'll see what happens. That's sometime in March. It's not been set yet. We could see a pretty big board shakeup, and that would have reverberations throughout the whole company. The last expectation for 2024 is in August, we get the D23 Expo. And this is typically when Disney announces a lot of their big stuff, right? There's a Marvel panel, a Pixar panel. Every major studio that is under Disney kind of presents what are they working on for the next 2 to 5 years or whatever. Disney Parks also shows up in a big way here and kind of announces plans for the future and everything. The last two D23s have been very lackluster. And the one even before that, pretty much everything that was announced got canceled from a Disney park standpoint.
Yep.
So like a lot of the Disney Parks fan base is all just kind of looking at this one going, this is your last chance. If you don't show us something that you're actually going to do, we're going to start losing a lot of faith in where everything's going. So I've heard a lot of people just kind of waiting and seeing what is this D23 going to look like. I think that's also when we're going to hear a lot of kind of our questions on Disney animation, like what are they really working on? This is kind of where they tip their hand a little bit to the diehard fans, and you'll see different things boil out on that one. So that's sometime, I think, mid-August. That is the D23 Expo. So that's the last big expectation that I have from Disney here in 2024.
I feel like 2024 is going to be like a in-between year, because last year was the big upheaval. Last year we had the Iger coming in, starting to try to do things, and nothing really was working. It was a down year for movies, with none of them hitting $1 billion in revenue. And I don't sense that they even know what the answer to any of that is. And I think this year they will probably try to, like you said, maybe at D23 or other times or other shareholder meetings, try to, by the end of the year, have some sort of like vision. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to solve the problems we've been having. And they've already come out even a little bit and said, we need to get back to good storytelling. But there's nothing that they can show, like actually produce this year, that would show that they've made a difference in that, because, well, one, we had the writer's strike, but also movies take time. They take time. So everything that even came out during the Chapek short-lived era was stuff that Iger had greenlit before that. So I don't expect there to be any like, wow, they really had this amazing film that came out and it totally changed everything. As high hopes as I have for Inside Out 2, they would need a string of big wins for that to happen, and I just don't see that in Mufasa or any of their other films that like will change the trajectory of where they're going. So I think 2024, do not have high hopes for something happening this year with any sort of teeth or grit to it. There might be some come to Jesus moment where they try to make something like that happen, but it's going to we're still several years away from them actually getting this giant boat turned around. So that's my expectation.
I would agree. 2024 is going to be a lot of internal shaking and turning and different things happening that we won't see out on the surface.
Even an ESPN straight to consumer, direct to consumer product would still be years away. They might tell us what they're doing, but I don't like. They'd have to actually have a product for us to use and see. I don't think that's
that one. I don't know. They've said in public that they're by the end of 2024 they hope to have a product launch. That they have the mechanism. They just don't know how to make the content work. And we saw kind of hints at this with the Apple Vision Pro, right? That they've got ideas, they've got direction they want to go with it, but whether or not they can execute it and afford the rights to execute it is another big question. So, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like so many things could happen. I think you are right in that this is the year that everything shakes and shifts, and 2025 we'll see what comes out on the other end.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm not sure any of these films they could make that.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, look back at the films. What are the ones that are going to actually make them some money?
Inside Out is your best.
I think Deadpool 3 will make them some money. Yes. And I think they'll make a decent amount of money off of Deadpool, maybe off of Planet of the Apes as well. Nothing what they're used to, though. I think you're right. Inside Out 2, Deadpool 3, maybe. R-rated films have a harder time getting up high numbers, but that's not a stellar track record for that. So I think that's what we're saying. We will see. We will wait and see. So before we go, JB, I hope you and the family have a wonderful week as you guys get back into the rhythm of things like everybody else.
Yep. We finished off our Christmas/New Year break with a little bit of a bang. I had this idea for a video because I'm a video editor, and I was thinking of doing a tutorial video for other aspiring editors, and I needed something like eye-catching for the beginning part of the video, and I was like, it'd be funny to like drop something or break something or have it shatter in slow motion. But I didn't want to use other things that were already out there. I was like, I could film something. I could do this myself. And so I went to my local Dollar Tree, just wandering around and looking in for glass vases or what. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, maybe I could drop a dumbbell or something on top of something like that. Well, what if I like filled it with water or something else? It's like, what, we need something in it. Like we need a figure or something. And in their back in the kids section was a little SpongeBob character. And I was like, this is perfect. This is great. So I thought my kids were going to love it. And so I took it home and I showed them it, and they're like, oh, SpongeBob. And I like put him in the vase, and we even got food coloring to make it like blue and stuff. And they're like, this is awesome. This is so good. Can we play with them? I'm like, okay, guys, guess what we're going to do? We're going to drop a giant weight on it. And they were like, but will that hurt SpongeBob? So I set the whole thing up. I was like, come out and watch it. And I drop it and it shatters everywhere. I sent you the video of it. My son was so traumatized by it that he ran inside and hid in his room because he was like, wait. and then he came back out and he couldn't get closer because there were still pieces of glass everywhere. That was a whole other thing. I had to like clean up all this glass everywhere in the because I did it in the driveway, and I found it and it had been shattered into like two big pieces right on his mouth where his mouth is wide open, and it had broken in half. And they were so upset that they never really got to play with him beforehand. Even though I bought it to be shattered, to be dropped on. I didn't take one of their toys.
But that's a lose-lose situation that you put yourself in.
I did.
Because if you would have let them play with it and then destroy it, I mean, that's just as bad, right? Like they would have been, and then you didn't let them play with it. So there's just no way.
Yeah, bad parenting today.
That's fatherhood for you.
It's fatherhood, but it was definitely some bad parenting today. And now I'm probably going to have to go to Dollar Tree and get another one for them. Although I do have an extra vase.
At least it's only $1.
It is. That's why I did it.
You sent me the video of it, and it was the most random thing because I'm like, wait, what? What is this? What's going on? I just see this giant weight crush SpongeBob in a vase.
It was a lot for a very short video, but we'll see. But with that, you've got your weekly dose of Disney nostalgia.
Be sure to subscribe to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast, wherever you listen to your other favorite podcast. Hey, and give us a look on YouTube as well.
Yep, we're posting all the full videos over there. And while you're there, please like or leave a 5-star review and share it with your best friend.
You can also check us out at honeywemade.com, where you can see all of our nostalgic reviews of your favorite Disney movies.
Including next week when you can tune in to hear our review of Alice in Wonderland.
Thank you for listening, and remember, the sea be mostly hard work, and the bigger satisfaction a man gets is doing his duty.